My name is Wendy Hamilton, and in this presentation I will explore how restoring coastal land into wetland ecosystems can help adaptation to the sea level rise resulting from climate change. The Vancouver Island coastal region has one of the longest growing seasons in Canada, supporting a variety of crops from vegetable and berries to livestock and specialty crops. It is also home and grazing area to the local wildlife that share this land with us. Around 40% of the lands within the agricultural land reserve are vulnerable to intense heat and flooding due to climate change and sea level rise. This flooding damages already existing crops, changes the salinity of the soil, and contributes to the proliferation of pests and invasive species. Because of this, I decided to explore mitigation and adaptation strategies that can improve the resilience of this important area. I approached this literature review by selecting studies related to wetland conservation and its successful implementation globally. I emphasized papers on salt marshes and seagrass, as those are the main wetland types existing in BC, as we can see on Figure 2. I researched the benefits and barriers of wetland restoration through studies that explore the economic value of coastal land, the inherent value of ecosystem services provided by estuarine areas, and systematic reviews of wetland restoration success indicators. In addition, I looked at government reports and booklets of already implemented restoration strategies, policies, and procedures. Coastal wetlands are one of the most endangered ecosystems on the planet, with 25 to 50% of them having been degraded or lost in the last century. They are also one of the most important ecosystems of the planet, providing a variety of ecosystem goods and services that interconnect land, sea, and freshwater. Although the value of raw materials, food, water, and marine life is obvious to us, the high degree of interconnectivity of these unique estuarine areas make it difficult to accurately quantify this value. This proves to be a barrier in informing cost, the legal frameworks, policy, and community acceptance that are necessary in order to protect these areas. Considering that sea level will continue to rise in the coming years, it is more proactive to look at adaptation strategies instead of attempting to mitigate the effects of flooding and saltwater intrusion. The use of salt-tolerant crops could create an economic value in the short run, but considering sea level rise is largely dependent on which global path and strategy we take in the coming years, the adaptation provided through restoring wetland ecosystem services will likely be more beneficial in the long run. Wetland restoration is a complex process that involves management across different spatial and temporal scales, but for the purpose of this presentation, I created a summary of procedure considerations found in literature. Number 1. It is important to identify the process underlying degradation, considering human and historical disturbances, invasive species, etc. 2. The restoration site must be described considering the ecosystem it's contained in and all complex biodiversity interactions. 3. Restoration goals and project rationale should be clearly defined, measurable, and achievable, along with described restoration activities such as methods, logistic, projected timeline, cost, necessary permits, and safety concerns. This helps convince stakeholders of the project's value and feasibility. Long-term maintenance and monitoring activities should be considered and discussed. This guarantees that long-term data assessment is able to properly evaluate the effectiveness of the project. References should also be provided to back up strategies and findings. Again, this is a synthesis of some of the successful wetland restoration processes I found in literature, although specifications will greatly vary depending on location, ecosystem complexity, etc. There are multifaceted synergistic benefits to restoring flooded coastal areas into wetlands. Environmentally, plants improve coastal soil by trapping and retaining mineral sediment. Their roots contribute to erosion resistance by holding the soil in place. This strengthens ecosystem resilience by supporting biodiversity through adding wildlife habitat and contributes to the regeneration of ecosystem services, which purify water, capture carbon from the atmosphere, and reduces greenhouse gas effects in the long run. Socially, on top of the human benefits of ecosystem services, this adaptation strategy benefits local communities due to the wetland's potential as a buffer for rising tides and storm surges. In the image, you can see how a living shoreline would be more efficient at dissipating waves and maintaining coastal structure. Wetlands also provide the opportunity to grow economically viable crops. To name some, glasswort is both edible and used as a renewable fuel source. Another option, salt hay crops, are valuable as weed-free mulch. In addition, enhancing coastal area resilience reduces the inherent costs associated with long-term climate change effects. As we can see, wetland restoration provides a multitude of benefits and opportunities beyond coastal agriculture. As I mentioned previously, one of the challenges is quantifying the benefits of the complex interactions between biodiversity and ecosystems in order to inform policy and guarantee funding for restoration projects. Monitoring of successful restoration indicators can aid in this regard. For example, changes in species diversity and distribution, as well as individual size, are fast and easy measurements of successful recovery. Ecosystem service measurements such as carbon sequestration, nutrient, and sediment dynamics are slower, but better evidence of ecosystem restoration. Due to this, long-term monitoring is recommended for better results. Cost is another common challenge. BlueCam, a carbon accounting model that is broadly applicable in similar climatic regions, helps due to its robust empirical observation approach. Through quantifying carbon sources and sinks from coastal wetland restoration, it reduces costs of implementation while providing projections of risk reduction to adjacent landholders. This can help incentivize financial participation and acceptance of restoration projects within the community. In conclusion, wetland restoration is evidenced to be a multi-beneficial strategy to adapting to climate change effects, in particular sea level rise and coastal flooding. Through reintroduction and expansion of biodiversity and ecosystem services, wetlands increase the resilience and productivity of the area, as well as provide a physical barrier that protects soil and buildings adjacent to coastal areas.